A very, very good morning to you, Stephen, all the way from India.
And good morning, good early morning to you from Scottsdale, Arizona in the US.
I'm so glad. I mean, I know we always make you wake up so early, but I'm so grateful you're always there with all that energy. And I mean, I'm so thankful to you for that, Stephen.
It's my pleasure.
Well, it always, as I was talking to Arun Bablani the other session, I mean, you guys have been there for the first version. You guys know how espousal has grown to what it is right now. So thank you so much, Stephen, for being here once again. And it's an absolute pleasure and honor to have you here today.
Well, thank you.
And to start off with this amazing panel who is going to be talking all about safety in events. And there's going to be a lot more. I mean, we have the experts from across the globe who are going to be a part of this panel. But I'm not going to tell you much about that. But for those of you all who have logged in now and don't know Stephen, let me tell you a little about him. Stephen A. Adelman, all the way from Arizona here, head of Adelman Law Group and VP of the Event Safety Alliance. He is located in the United States and VP of the Event Safety Alliance, an international association. His law practice focuses on risk and safety at live events throughout the North America. He serves as an expert witness in crowd-related lawsuits. Stephen Adelman is widely recognized as an authority regarding safety and security. Thank you, Stephen, for being here. It's always an absolute honor to have you, and the stage is all yours while the panelists log in.
Great. So welcome, everyone, and greetings from early morning in Arizona in the US. We have some interesting panelists to discuss safety at weddings and other events. Because these are challenging times. We're in a state of flux. It varies quite a lot from country to country and even within countries. And so we're going to talk about what it's like to put on events now, what the near future looks like, and in some cases, the extremely near future, like as soon as we finish this conversation. Because everything is changing. The sand is shifting under our feet. So let's have some kind of boots on the ground discussion about the realities, the actual risks that exist, and what some realistic strategies might be to address those risks as we open more, or in some cases just start. Because there are no clearly right answers here. Potentially, there are a lot of wrong answers, so we're all sort of muddling through this together. So that's the background, just to lay a little foundation, because that's what lawyers do. We lay foundation. Now let me introduce our panelists. So we have Charmaine Favaz from Tentworks near Johannesburg. We have Llewellyn Duplessis from Urban Motion Events, also near Johannesburg. We have Sally Arnold of Sally Arnold Events near me in Scottsdale, Arizona. So we have a nice diversity, and I guess, starting from the point that we discussed when we were practicing. So for those of you watching, we had a dry run conversation a couple of days ago, and it was really lively. This is not a shy group. So just as I had pitched to you all a few days ago, I'm going to start with the question, are you working weddings and events now? And I know that one of you is dressed to go. Sally Arnold, are you working weddings and events now?
Yes, Steve, actually I am. As you know, we had our first wedding of the year on Wednesday. It was a small elopement, so safety for that was quite simple. But today, as soon as I finish this panel, I'm out the door to a wedding for 100 guests, outdoors, thankfully. But this will be a true test for all of the safety measures that we have in place today.
Well, that sounds great and terrifying. Charmaine, how about you? Are you doing any events yet in the Johannesburg area?
Yes, for sure. Currently, here in South Africa, we can have outside events up to 250 people and indoor events up to 100 people. So yes, we have been doing events, and yes, there's the safety measures and stuff is challenging. So if I can put it that way, people are struggling to get accustomed to the new norm that they should be following. But we'll see what the future holds, yes, we'll see.
Llewellyn, that leaves you. What are you doing these days?
Yes, definitely. We also work currently, especially in the corporate industry, a lot currently, where corporate interaction is starting to go more for a hybrid type of solution with virtual elements. And then also we had a wedding already in January where it put us to the test to make sure that people do follow the regulations. It's not as easy. As I mentioned also during our test run, it's very easy with corporate events, but with family-related events such as weddings and funerals, it's not as easy to comply or your guests don't comply.
So let's talk about that, and then we'll kind of unwind our circle and go back through. Llewellyn, you had mentioned that when we were chatting before. Explain why it's different dealing with people at corporate events than it is at, social or family events like a wedding. What's the difference?
I think that also comes into one of the main fighting elements for the events industry currently in South Africa. A lot of companies say, or a lot of the alliances want to open up business events. And we saw that firsthand now. It's so much easier controlling people within a business event environment, especially exhibitions, conferences, seminars, and training sessions. Because within a corporate environment, you work with employees and you can actually have repercussions in place. So if an employee does not wear a mask, they can actually get a final written warning and they can be dismissed, or they can be a monetary value linked to it within the corporate rules and regulations. So we saw that directly now working at Empress Palace, one of the venues that we regularly work with. They do have their safety protocols in place, but when they do actually announce the safety protocols, they also announce to the guests to say that you follow these protocols, but if your company has any of their own protocols, you should follow those first. And that makes it easier because you come with two types of packages of protocols. You have the venue, which it has a really good standard currently because it's part of an international group. And then you have companies that have these rules and regulations as well, which has to be enforced. And you can actually enforce it. You can walk to someone and give them a written warning. With weddings and funerals, that is not the case. You have to be very careful. You're working with personal emotions. You're working, first of all, with people that know each other. So as soon as you know someone, you think, oh, they won't have COVID, so let me give them a hug. Let me actually comfort them on this special day. And that's when hugs happen. That's when kisses happen. That's when holding of hands happen. It is just a mess. And what do you do if you actually have a funeral, which is currently our two main triggers in South Africa? Funerals as well as weddings are main contributors to massive outbreaks. And can you imagine walking up to someone at a wedding and say, listen to the bride, listen, if you're not going to put your mask on now, we're going to stop this event. It is not possible. Where at a corporate event, you can do that. You can say to the client, listen, we're going to fine you 10,000 Rand. And unfortunately, the event has been halted by the municipality and we have to stop it here. So that's just my view on why it is so difficult. And it's almost undoable. Like if you just work in these type of settings, enforcement, it's one thing to have a rule and regulations, but it's another thing to actually enforce it.
Charmaine, you're dealing with probably more production people. How is it enforcing rules about mask wearing and social distancing among your staff?
Okay, so obviously we also have standard sets of rules and stuff. So they have to wear masks, obviously, at all times. But then we have the challenges. Some of the rigging of the equipment is quite physical, so it's hard to actually work, doing a very hard physical activity and wear a mask at the same time. So the rule is there then as soon as that specific job is done, they have to put their mask back on. And then, yeah, so that's it's challenging at times, but mostly the staff is into the routine now, if I can put it that way. I mean, our vehicles all have sanitization equipment in the vehicles. We've got a box of medical masks in every vehicle for in case people, lose their mask, or how it goes. There's not the mask is not always with him. So from our side, we try and do what we can do. But then coming to the client, and again adding to what Llewellyn said, it's very hard working with personal events and weddings and that type of people, because for you to enforce those regulations onto a family, for instance, that makes it really hard.
Yeah. Sally, you actually have both sides of that equation. So I know that for the wedding that you're about to go to today, you were doing production work yesterday. So how are people dealing with social distancing and face covering and hand washing on the production side? And then what do you anticipate seeing among the bridal party and their guests today at the wedding that you're about to work?
Yeah, so I'm going to echo the same sentiments that Llewellyn and Charmaine shared earlier. So on the production side, yesterday we had our event set. Everyone was wearing a face covering. Social distancing wasn't an issue because we didn't have that many people setting up. So that went very smoothly. I am very careful to, in my final timeline, which is similar to a run of show on a corporate side, I will share with them, these are the rules and guidelines that we are following today. Now, in Arizona, as you know, Steve, things are basically open for business. I know. The venue for ceremony is different than the reception location, which is at a private home. But the venue hasn't determined as of yesterday what their new rules are, because there was just a change here in the state of Arizona. So I don't go by any local rules. We follow the CDC guidelines. So all the vendors today know that they are to follow the CDC guidelines, and that includes wearing a mask for the entire time. Our officiant obviously will not wear a mask during ceremony. But last night we had the rehearsal. It's a very large wedding party. I think there were about 42 people gathered yesterday for the rehearsal, and I was the only person, along with the venue coordinator, wearing a mask. Everybody else was hugging and kissing, and we anticipate that today everyone will wear a mask for ceremony, and we have personalized masks that we will be handing out as well in case people don't bring their own. And that's a fun way to do it, with the bride and groom's name on it and the date. That makes it more fun. And people are usually really compliant for ceremony. What happens is it's cocktail hour, and now we're having drinks, and now we're eating. And so the masks obviously have to come off, and now we're loose and we've seen everybody. And so we're, going to leave those masks off for dancing. And it is very challenging. And the other factor that I've seen is it really depends on the families, what their level of comfort is and what their expectations are. And then we are happy to go from there. But we do seat by families only. So, we're doing our best, and we're using larger tables than we have in the past with fewer people. So that's another thing that we're doing.
So I'm going to pose a question to all of you. You can sort of jump into this as a free-for-all, but I'll set it up. We've been talking about compliance with rules, and how that's difficult, and maybe more difficult in some environments even than in others. The question regards, how willing are you in your professional capacity to play essentially COVID cop, to be the enforcer? And I will start by offering my own experience so that you can think about this. I have gotten hired on several jobs, which have turned out to be either film shoots or corporate events, to be the health and safety enforcement person. And so my job description was to essentially be COVID compliance officer, COVID cop here in the States. And I'm okay with that because everyone knew that was my job. And I actually did have to threaten one young man who thought he understood the consequences of coronavirus better than the scientists. And we had a discussion privately, but we had a discussion and it got kind of heated. Ultimately, his boss walked over and solved the problem. And so I didn't have to throw his ignorant behind off the job site, which is what I was about to do. So, with that, the question is, what, if anything, do you guys have in mind as a strategy to enforce rules when you see people not following health and safety rules?
Who can go first? Okay, well, basically, but it's not so easy to enforce it because first of all, you're dealing with a celebration. So yes, I mean the right thing to do is to go to whoever's event it is, and tell them, listen, your guests are not adhering to the health and safety rules, and we potentially can shut this event down. It can become a super spreader event. I mean, that's why these things are so important. Like here in South Africa, our second wave was based on a super spreader event that happened among matric pupils, over December. They went on matric, which is the final year of school for you guys overseas that I know that. They went on matric vacations, and that's became super spreader events, and the country literally went into lockdown because of those events where it started. So any event can become a super spreader event, and the risks are tremendous, but it is not so easy enforceable. It just is not. I don't know. Llewellyn, like Llewellyn said rightfully, a corporate event is easy because there's rules and regulations. But I mean, what will Sally do tonight if the guests don't wear their masks? You cannot control it. You cannot go up to a person and say, put your mask on or leave. You're not the police, So yeah, it's hard. It's very hard.
It is very hard, but Charmaine, I think a big part of it for weddings is having communication before the event with the family, the bride's family, the groom's family, and find out and have that difficult discussion. And I am not opposed to saying, you have guests flying in from all over the country. We do not want this to be a super spreader event. This is still early for us to be starting events. What is your comfort level? Because I would be happy to provide masks for people who don't have them and gently remind them and find out what their comfort level is with that. So obviously, if you have buy-in from the families, it makes my job so much easier.
Definitely. I think from my side as well, I'm normally the person like you, Steve, at a corporate event where I have my disclaimers up at every single entrance. And like sometimes the people that work with me say to me, why do I have this? Because it's disclaiming everything from even using water at a venue, but everything is included in that disclaimer. And from our side, I think it's always just so that you can, the case of emergency or something goes wrong. And COVID aside, with any event safety, it should always be the event organizer's responsibility to show that they have done everything possible from their side to make that event successful, first of all, and safe. Obviously, we have a virus and a super spreader currently amongst those safety things, but it goes the same with rigging. Ultimately, if I have an event and there's rigging, I need to ensure that that rigging or the tent that is up or the stage that goes up, from an organizer point of view, I need to ensure that I've done everything in my power to make it a safe environment. So I think with corporate events, yes, easier to enforce, but with weddings and personal birthday parties, what we've also seen is you have to just show the client, like Sally also said, that you have the intention of being strict, that you are following protocols from your side, and ultimately remove that blame or that risk from you as the organizing company. So have that conversation with your client and say to them, unfortunately, these are the rules and regulations that we would like to enforce. If you are not happy with us enforcing it, then unfortunately, hereby, we place that risk on you and we indemnify ourselves from this. Alternatively, if you are happy with us enforcing it, we do have COVID dedicated people normally on site, and they will actually remove it from which we've done before. So as soon as a person does not comply, you unfortunately remove them from the site. But that also has the impact of your relationship with your client going forward, because you don't want a fight necessarily at a special event like a wedding.
We are joined by Denver Benn. Denver, welcome. And we're talking about enforcing COVID rules. In your work on event sites and wedding locations these days, do you have any insights on how the health and safety rules that everyone knows but people are resistant to, do you have any insights about how to actually enforce those?
Good afternoon. Sorry that I had to log in a bit late, but I just actually stepped into my office. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes. These days, I've been at many weddings in the last couple of months because in South Africa, actually, weddings couldn't take place, under level, I think, under level 3 to 5. And thereafter, and there was so much weddings, outstanding. However, what I've come across, with all the wedding venues, the owners of those weddings, of those venues, they are responsible to see that they remain compliant during this time, and it is the owners lies with them, and the wedding party to give them a list of the guests that will accompany them on the day of the wedding, and that list, is submitted to the venue a few weeks before the time. So on arrival, then when you get there, your name is on the list. They do all that they need to do. They ask you a number of questions, whether you have certain illnesses and things like that, and they make it clear to the guest that it's important that everybody remain compliant, because venues in South Africa at this point in time, and even churches, are now regular being visited by government officials and also the police to see that we remain compliant within those buildings and churches and venues that we actually have functions in. So the thing is, at the same time, when it comes to safety regulations, some of the venues don't have a safety officer, and therefore it's important that we appoint a safety officer at these venues that will see to it, that everything that is brought into that venue, especially when it comes to structures that is temporary, that they put up, like a stage, for instance, that structure has been checked, and they have received the correct paperwork and a COC, in order for the people to make use of it. So that is actually how things are being done out here in South Africa.
So in our few remaining minutes, I'm going to pose a question and ask each of you to respond in turn. Sally, I'll start with you. Here's the question. Is there anything that either a wedding party or a corporate event on the corporate side, is there anything that someone could say to you that you would simply say, I'm not going to work your event? whether it's the size of the event, the number of attendees, or their willingness to enforce social distancing and face coverings, or unwillingness to enforce those things, or a policy about requiring proof of vaccination. Is there any bright line that you have where you would say, as desperate as I am to work these days, this is just too much? So, Sally, you're living this today. Do you have any bright lines?
I will. Thanks for putting me first.
Yeah, Charmaine is like wiping sweat off her forehead. Charmaine, you're next.
So I do have a deal breaker, if you will, and this actually was happening in Arizona last year because, again, Arizona was real loosey-goosey and didn't have a lot of strict guidelines. But there was a wedding here in town where the mother of the bride decided that she did not want to see anyone in masks, any vendors in masks, any property people in masks, and no guests in masks. And this wedding was a friend of mine who's a planner in town, and she said, I'm not willing to do it. And I applaud her because, you know, we all are desperate to, you know, be back to work and have a little money in our checking accounts. And she passed, and there was another planner in town who was more than willing to do that. And that's not going to be me. Because at the end of the day, if one of my events becomes a super spreader event, or even if it doesn't, and I am a part of an event that is not following safety protocols that are put in place for my health, everyone on my team's health, and of course the guests or attendees' health, I don't want to be a part of that because the damage to me and my reputation is worth far more than a few dollars in my pocket.
Hear, hear. Charmaine?
Yes, so I would like to add to what Sally says, but my business is a little bit different because I've got two legs to my business. So the one part of it is where we actually purely supply infrastructure, and I mean, I work with Denver on some of these projects, and then, you know, I will put up a large tent for whatever event it is, but it's not physically my event. I'm just a supplier to this event. I'm not involved on the day at all. So yes, and I mean, we've done this now, but there's different regulations as well to different sectors. I mean, corporates on site, you can we've done this for extra canteen space and stuff like that. We've put up large marquees for 800 people and 1,500 people and stuff like that. But I supply the infrastructure and that's it. So that I will do. But when we are physically the event planners, the event managers on the day, if I have control over it up front, then I will advise, like, this is the rules. We need to stay within the rules. And then, yes, I will not take on an event that's larger than 250 upfront. I will not I will not supply equipment and stuff for 500 people for a private event if I know that it's outside the regulations. But what has happened to me in this last week is we supplied up to 250 because that was the event and that's everything that was discussed. And then when we arrived at the event, there was 500 people, you know, so that was completely out of our control. We weren't aware of this, and I don't think the people who we did the event for, they also didn't realize this was going to happen. But that's, again, you know, it's the culture in our country, and many times you just do not have control over it. People just arrive without invitations, and they are just like, well, we're here now, and this is it, you know. So yeah, so I won't do it intentionally. No, I will definitely stick within the rules. But unfortunately, things happen, and then you just don't have control over it, and then you just have to roll with it and pray for the best.
Llewellyn, any bright lines for you?
I must say that I think anything that would put my team in jeopardy would be a no-go. So for us, I work very closely with my team, is all people that I really know well. It's friends and family that work and support me in what we do. And my dad has a sound company, for instance, and infrastructure with regards to stages, etc. So we are all almost like supporting each other. So when an event becomes dangerous for my team, that is very important, because it's also people that I love and hold dearly in my life. So definitely, if I feel comfortable, I would not hesitate walking away. You can always make money again, but if you lose somebody that's on your team due to just somebody not wearing a mask or getting infected on an event, and it's still a big stress for us every time we go on site. Before we go on site and take on a project, we have to ask ourselves, is this money really worth it? Because we are putting our lives on the line. And you're putting yourself right in front of that gun, ready to go off at any time. You don't know when you're going to get infected. So yes, that's a line for me. If a client clearly does not want to comply, we'll rather step away from the event and walk away.
Denver, in our last minute, are there any bright lines for you? Anything that someone might ask you to do that you would simply say, no, this is not acceptable right now?
Absolutely. I must be honest with you, I'm a structural engineer. So at the end of the day, my license comes into play. And at the same time, also, I take total, responsibility for that event. And if I sign it off and one of those structures were not as per the requirements and the building regulations and safety regulations, that will cause, that I end up in prison, especially if anything goes wrong there and anybody lose their life on that site. And for that reason, I have a very good eye when it comes to building these structures, and I've studied it, and I know exactly what is going on, And sometimes I get out of my car in the parking bay and I can look at the structure and I can tell you, listen here, I myself will not put my 2 feet inside that structure. I have stopped many events in the past. Many government officials, were up in arms because sometimes, one of the ministers are there or the mayor comes to have a speech to the people, but you just can't let the people go into that place because it is not suitable and viable, and you place other people's lives in jeopardy. So the thing is, I am one of those people that will just turn around and walk away from anything that does not comply with the regulations and the protocols and the building regulations, SANS, 10400. Yes, it's important that you don't place yourself, in a situation that will cause you harm, and it can destroy your own livelihood at the end of the day. And I will not do that for money, because as what Llewellyn said, money can always be earned at another time.
And I very much agree with that. So with that, I will acknowledge what we just discussed is not easy. No one wants to walk away from paid work, certainly not now, not ever really. But whether it's our professional license or our reputation or our lives or the lives of people that we care about and love, none of that is worth one job. And I think we all know that. So I guess I think it's important to acknowledge it's difficult. It's difficult to do what we just said, but it's really important. There is nothing more important. So with that, let me thank our panelists. This was an interesting and I think important discussion. Llewellyn Duplessis, thank you very much. Charmaine Favaz, Denver Benn, Sally Arnold, go do your wedding right now. I am Steve Adelman, and I thank you for your time and your attention. Be safe, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.